Black Widow not only passes the battle tax, it forces men to scream as it puts them in their place. Well, it doesn't sound very feminist to me. Feminism aims to establish equality of sexes, not hatred towards men. Upon watching Black Widow, I found that the film not only failed its marketing strategy with toxic fake feminist idea, but also failed at female and male representation. Let's start with the sexism in earlier MCU films and see how this film handled the same matter. Natasha was first introduced as a femme fatale in Iron Man 2, a mysterious, seductive, and dangerous spy who pretended to be a secretary. In terms of storytelling, she was portrayed as a sexual object in relation to the womanizing Tony Stark. When Natasha exits the scene, Tony Stark states to Pepper Potts,
"I want one."
No.
In terms of mise-en-scène, he wears low-cut black leather uniforms in most of the scenes. She often fights a battle in a sexually suggestive pose. The way she moves, the way she dresses, was hypersexualized to invite male gaze. The male gaze, as Movie says in visual pleasure and narrative cinema, is the lens through which women are portrayed in film and across other mass media products. These images are created for and by men and systematically captured how male society would prefer women look, especially on screen. By viewing films that show women through this gaze, this concept is systematically reinforced. I know some people argue that her sexuality is part of her power. It serves the story and the portrayal of Tony Stark as a womanizer. But the problem is, to use one's sexuality as a weapon is to self-objectify oneself and enhances gender stereotype. We never saw any MCU male hero use his attractiveness to seduce his enemies, right? What differences does it make for her to break free of the Red Room, but to serve S.H.I.E.L.D. using the same way of deploying her sultry stare as a weapon? Even in 2012's Avengers, she uses the same tactic again, by faking as a weak female to interrogate bad guys.
Monster.
So, Banner. That's your play.
Marvel knows the problem behind, so they get rid of her femme fatale image later on, but there wasn't a direct response to the sexism in earlier films until now. It has been addressed by Yelena in Black Widow as a comic element. She rips Natasha about the infamous pose, a smart way to re-establish the disturbing past meaning of the same structure. Despite the film's messy handheld camera style, the problem of male gaze has been carefully dealt with and solved. One part I like about the fight scene is the way it makes use of the physical weakness of women, i.e. the long hair. When you fight with loose long hair, of course it would be an obstacle. It would get messy and would be used as a weak spot for attack. It's absolutely ridiculous how men fantasize female would act gracefully and beautifully all the time, wearing heavy makeup and loose long hair to battle. Another disturbing part is that Natasha served as a love interest for each single male Avenger in many MCU films. She flirted with Tony Stark in Iron Man 2, had a complicated past with Hawkeye in Avenger.
Is this love, Agent Romanoff?
Love is for children. I owe him a debt.
Fake as a lover for Steve Rogers in Captain America 2. This treatment of her was not restricted to the movie scripts themselves.
She's a slut.
Right, just flirt with everybody.
Both actors later apologized, but we can see how general audience perceive these relationships as something more than pure friendships, and Natasha's image as a sexual object. Since she is a love interest for everybody, when the writers tried to introduce a real romantic relationship for her and Bruce Banner, it fell out of nowhere. They both share a lot of pain from the past, and she was actually reconciling with her past by falling in love with him. Yet, this plotline was left to linger, and her chance of self-actualization was lost until her sacrifice in Avengers Endgame. How does Marvel handle this matter this time? Well, they sort of do it again. What does this scene remind us of? Well, this scene between Loki and Sylvie. Don't find it believable enough? Let's see how Wikipedia describes Mason, an ally from Rockman's S.H.I.E.L.D. past who is romantically interested in her. Why did they create this character and this romantic history? According to Build a Myth, when women in culture show character, they are not desirable, as opposed to the desirable Agnes Ingenia. I argue that Mason's creation is to remind the audience how desirable Natasha is, since Marvel cannot show her beauty through cinematic elements anymore. She can only get resources from a guy who is interested in her. Also, Mason isn't really a character in this case. He just serves as a plot device and tool to give Natasha what she needs. When there are only female characters in a film, they should try their best to explore each character rather than wasting them. With no male representation to compare, female representation cannot be completed. Not only do they objectify both Natasha and Mason in this part, but more importantly, they also diminish her subjectivity as a protagonist and as a hero. Sexism is just one of the problems in MCU films on the portrayal of Natasha, as Main states in feminist film theory and criticism. If dualism and sexual differences are obsessive concerns in psychoanalysis as they are in the cinema, the task for feminists is to engage with the dualism, while insisting on the possibilities of other approaches. Here I try to use a storytelling approach. Black Widow is, after all, a superhero movie. You can't write a good female character without writing a good character first. One of the stories MCU fans have been waiting to see for years is Natasha's origin story before she joined S.H.I.E.L.D. and her adventure with Hawkeye in Budapest.
You and I remember Budapest very differently.
Natasha's past was barely shown in previous MCU films, and it creates a missing gap in her arc. It's hard for Black Widow to succeed in the first place after Natasha's death in Avengers Endgame and her arc has ended. Rather than functioning as an actual origin prequel, Black Widow is set after the event of Captain America: Civil War, making the full reveal of her origin story become impossible. Her horrible experience in the Red Room is only shown in the first 10 minutes of the film, and how she broke free of that situation with the help of Hawkeye is only told through dialogue.
Killing Dreykov was the final step in my defection to S.H.I.E.L.D.
Although the movie deals with the characters' infidelity, a part of femininity stripped away from them, it ignores to address the sexual violence and psychological manipulation forced on female. I think we could all imagine how female spies are related to sexual seduction. The movie fails at depicting or retelling Natasha's intriguing past, and is also unable to properly grasp her full arc. Although Natasha was introduced as a femme fatale, she became a much more complex character later on. She wants to right her wrongs from her past by being a hero and serving the Avengers. She is an important part of the Avengers, who brings and keeps them together. Other Avengers are her anchors to help her become a better person. We can conclude that family is the main theme of her arc. Black Widow continued this recurring theme by telling a story of family reunion. The Russian spies Alexei and Melina have adopted Natasha and Yelena for 3 years as a cover for their mission. The film tries to emphasize the importance of family, and gave motive for Natasha to sacrifice herself for the Avengers in Endgame. But the depiction of family and the relationship of Natasha with her family aren't very convincing in the film. The writers didn't give enough time for the family plot lines and character development. The mother figure Melina worked as the Red Room's lead scientist for 20 years. She develops mind control technology, tries to kill her pig almost like a psychopath, and betrays Natasha to the Red Room in the second act. But she immediately regrets it after an emotional conversation with Natasha. The sudden change of the character feels so unreal, and the family message doesn't seem sincere at all. If Natasha really has her family in mind, she probably wouldn't sacrifice herself without a second thought in Endgame.
I used to have nothing, and then I got this. This job, this family, they're gone.
So Black Widow really doesn't explain her determination very well, which in turn creates more plot holes to Endgames. She is a supporting character in MCU films, a catalyst for other characters to grow.
I didn't want you to be alone.
A key to keep the family together.
Staying together is more important than how we stay together.
Similar to other supporting characters like Clint and Bruce, she didn't have a clear-cut personality besides her femme fatale image. So when she gets a standalone film as a protagonist, I wish to see more of her personality outside this framework of the family film. But Marvel chooses not to explore further, and it seems Natasha isn't an interesting character anymore once she takes off her femme fatale mask. Yelena feels more like the protagonist than her in the film, so Black Widow has failed to fill in the gaps in her arc, story, and personality in previous films. Even when they no longer depict her as a sexual object, she isn't a very well-written female character. We have talked a lot about Natasha. Now let's move on to the female and male representation of other characters. The whole plot of Black Widow besides the family part is a huge joke to female empowerment. General Dreykov invents a chemical to mind control the Black Widows, and there is an antidote to free them. This simple plot avoids the real conflicts and complexity behind human trafficking and meaningful exploration of autonomy. General Dreykov has been controlling spies years before this invention. How did he control them psychologically and physically? How did Natasha break through the man's control without antidote? These are the real issues here. I'm sure mind control chemical isn't a common way to control women in reality. In the gender knot, unraveling our patriarchal legacy, Johnson states that patriarchy does not refer to any man or collection of men, but to a kind of society in which men and women participate. It is organized around an obsession with control and involves as one of its key aspects the oppression of women. In other words, making a single man the ultimate mastermind of girl kidnapping organization isn't a good way to depict the systematic problems of human trafficking. In Daredevil, a Marvel TV show produced by Netflix, this problem is presented much more realistically. When Daredevil defeats the persons in charge of human trafficking in Hell's Kitchen, he finds that some other guys or organization will take up their positions.
They've been running a human trafficking ring out of Hell's Kitchen. Took over when the Italians folded up.
So you find him. So what? We'll take another. Kill me, somebody takes my place. Long as people are buying, we'll be selling. Nothing you do tonight will change.
When there is demand, there is supply. This is the real horror of human trafficking, and Black Widow can't even show 1% of it. Also, why even call anyone or this film Black Widow at all? Black Widow is clearly a nickname General Dreykov created for his slave.
They answer to me and my widows.
Why refer these girls as Black Widow and even use your slave nickname like a superhero title? These Black Widows aren't characters in this film. They're just objects waiting to be saved by the protagonist. Their nickname reflects this fact precisely. The antagonist Taskmaster is also like that. Her hatred towards Natasha is purely a thought forced upon her. She doesn't even have the autonomy to hate Natasha, someone who almost killed her in the past. She is just supposed to forgive her because she is controlled. How convenient that is. Female empowerment is a joke in this film, and there are a lot of lame jokes as well. Yelena and Alexei provide most of the comic relief for Black Widow. One of the most interesting scenes is how she jokes about her hysterectomies when Alexei tries to discomfort her with her femininity.
Why the aggression, huh? Is it your time of the month?
They just get right in there and they chop them all away. Everything out.
Okay.
So you can't have babies.
You don't have to get so clinical and nasty.
She is self-depreciating with her own weakness to fight him back. This is a comedy strategy from performing marginality, comedy, identity, and cultural critique. Self-depreciation is ingratiating rather than aggressive. It acknowledges the opinion of the dominant culture, even appears to confirm it, and allows the speaker or writer to participate in the humorous process without alienating the members of the majority. It should be a smart way to use humor against male-dominant culture. The first problem here is that these jokes aren't that funny, and in turn their criticism on male-dominant culture may be weakened. The comic elements have diminished the emotional impact of these characters. Yelena have been controlled for years, but she is still capable of being quirky and funny once she escapes from that horrible experience. And every time Alexei is having an emotional scene, it would become a joke.
What? I bared my soul to you and it was just you the whole time?
The jokes are re-emphasizing gender stereotype. Alexei is portrayed as a dumb muscle who used spirits to insult women like a 15-year-old. There are only 3 male characters in the film, and all of them are portrayed with male stereotypes. One is a tool, second is an evil man, and third is an idiot. As if you can't write a female empowerment story with a nice, normal male character who respects women. Hollywood is so obsessed with feminist film that they fail again and again at female and male representation. They forget to write good stories and characters first that can help attract audience receive positive messages. Black Widow isn't a real feminist film, and films like this just amplify the otherness of women and launch a gender war. But sexism is still a very real matter, considering so many people watch these films because they want to see how sexy Scarlett Johansson is, and even call Florence Pugh fat and ugly. We should all think about what feminist films we need in this day and age to improve the sexism, rather than making males hate females even more. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and comment down below. Want to watch more film analysis and video essay? Click the subscribe button and ring the bell for more ways of seeing. See you soon.